Now in order to finish the collar, we just need to slip stitch the facing over the collar. So I went ahead and flipped my dress so that the wrong side of the fabric is out, just because it's easier for me to see what I'm doing. And you're just going to take that collar and tuck it underneath the facing. And you're going to slip stitch that closed. So I have a double threaded needle here. And I'm just going to grab a small piece of the right side of the fabric and then thread it through here. Now you can decide if you want to do a different stitch. I'm going to try to make my stitch as invisible as I can, but you can also just slip stitch this if you prefer. So if you want to slip stitch it, you'll just grab a little tiny bit of the right side of the fabric and then just stick it right through both folds. I am not actually going to do that. I'm going to try to make mine more hidden, and it will take a little bit longer, but I prefer the look of that. So you can decide which one you want to do. Okay, so I prefer this over a slip stitch because it's harder to see. All right, so do that throughout the entire section that you just did. So the collar on the left side and the collar on the right side. You will hand stitch all of that closed and then join me again. Now instead of going on to step 21, I prefer to do step 22 next and then finish up with my hem. So I am now on step 22, and this is the front of the dress. And what you'll want to do is take this to your ironing board and you will press with the iron 5/8 on each side. So this is the seam that I've already done, and then from there to the bottom it's open. So press these 5/8, and I've already done that. If you need to, you can measure it out, but it's also pretty safe to just eyeball it. The next thing that you'll want to do before stitching these is take that seam that you just pressed and fold it. So this is a narrow seam. And I actually prefer to usually just freehand stitch these, but you can pin it if you need to. I will do a few here just to show you an example. So you're going to do that all the way through. And then when you get to the seam that you already did at the top here, you're going to be stitching over this and continuing down this line. So when you go to stitch this, you will stitch from the bottom up to the seam, across in one stitch, and continue on down the other side. So all of it gets stitched together. So go ahead and turn that also in. And you're just going to be stitching about 1/4 across the top there. So at about 1/4, you'll put in a pin so that you know where to start turning. Another thing to note is which way your pins are facing. So whenever I stitch this and I'm coming with the sewing machine, I will want this pin to be like this so that I can pull it out. So if I do it the other way, I would have to try to stitch over this ball, and that's obviously impossible. So make sure that you pin it so that you can remove the pin. All right, so you'll want to do all of that and then join me again, and I'll show you how I stitch this at the sewing machine. And just put in as many pins as you need to feel comfortable stitching yours. This is what the front of your dress will look like after you've completed step 22. So you can see on the inside where I did the double fold, and I just stitched very close to the edge. And then in the front, on the right side of the fabric, this is the nice look that you get. Now I will be doing the hem next, and I'm doing it a little bit differently than what they have in the instructions. And I do recommend that instead of just blindly following the instructions, you put on whatever shoes that you want to wear with this dress, and then figure out what you need your hem to be for you personally with your height. So for me, that meant turning up the hem 2 inches. So I measured around the entire dress 2 inches and pinned it in place. What I'm going to do next, I'm not going to stitch this because it just seems like an added step that I don't think that I need to do. and I'm going to go ahead and do the 5/8 inch basting. So I'll show you how I do that now. To do the basting around the perimeter of the dress's hem, you'll want to use another long stitch. So I'm going to take my length and set it at 5, which is the longest that I have. And then I'm just going to stitch 5/8 from the edge. Just make sure when you get to a seam that the seam is open. All right, and that's all I'm going to show of this. I'm going to do this around the entire perimeter of the dress, so you need to do that too. And then once you've done that, meet me again, and I'll show you how to gather this so that you can begin hemming the dress. After you've done the basting on the hem, this is what it looks like. And you will just put in a pin here at the end, like so. And I would recommend that you do this on this end and also on the other end and just work in sections of 2. And then you will take the top thread of your basting and just pull it a little bit and it will start to gather like this. Then you just want to take those gathers and gently move them throughout the entire hem. And that just starts to fit in all of this extra material. Okay, so that's just an example of that. You'll want to do that until it's fitted throughout the entire piece. And you don't want sections like this where it curls, to make sure that those still lay straight. So just move your basting until everything is fitted and you don't have any fabric pulling towards any direction. It should just be slightly gathered inwards. Once you've done that, you will take that 5/8 inch basting and you will fold it under. And once it's folded under, you will repin it. And I am just going to use the pins that I have here at the bottom and then repin this. Once that's done, we'll be slip stitching this entire hem. So gather this in. I do recommend you work on one side of the dress and then the other side of the dress. Once everything is fitted, fold under the 5/8 and repin the hem so that you can begin doing your hand stitching.
Looks like there should be a place to see the green.